So it was wholesale robbery. They thought they'd gotten away with it. Hitler was elected. They even entered the banks in order to place them under the same control and to turn their credit policy into a weapon for the small traders, innkeepers, and master artisans against the remaining grades of society. They wanted control of the banks, so money gets lent to who they think it should be lent to. Special committees of the Fighting League began to compile new price lists, decree minimum trading profits. You got that? Minimum trading profit. You have to make at least a certain percent of profit on something you sell. And if we find you're making less profit than that, you're in trouble. Now, this is because they want the middle class to always be able to make a certain amount of profit because they're middle class. So you couldn't trade lower than this minimum trading profit. And this forced prices madly upwards, right? Because if you get something that's a little too high price, you have to jack your price up no matter what. The whole nation was to be exploited by the shopkeeping class. So, you can see economic policy of the Nazis. This was a group of people they eventually liquidated and tried to get rid of. And they thought they had won. They thought, our man got in, right on, we can take over now. We skip down to page 34. Hundreds of refractory brown shirts were disarmed or sent to concentration camps. That's what you get. Your guy wins, you start cheering, you start doing the stuff you all planned. Oh, a concentration camp? What's that? That's economic policy in Nazi Germany. For the others, the service conditions and drill were ruthlessly intensified. The material conditions were worsened. New brown shirt members were ordered to pay for their uniforms themselves. Those among the old members who got work received wages scarcely exceeding their old unemployment relief, right? Oh, unemployment was cured. Here's $20 more per week than you were getting from the state for not working. And you get to work 40 hours now. How do you like that? The same thing occurred above and below. So it's not just the middle class that had this happen. It was in very fact a complete coup d'etat. This is the catastrophe and the ignominy of the lower middle class. Its ideas are overthrown. Its leaders are struck down. And now the process is continuing against the masses of this class themselves. Instead of economic renaissance, they get economic degradation. For monopoly capital and its new state cannot get on without exploiting them. Okay? They had bright dreams about what was going to happen when their man got into power, but in reality, the middle class has a lot of wealth and a lot of people, and it's going to be exploited by a state that doesn't care about individual rights. All members of the middle class receive, instead of the abolition of taxes, right, that's what they wanted, what do they get? Additional voluntary taxes. How's that? What's the economic policy of the Nazis? Destruction, rape, and plunder. There are no rights. Anything that we want to do at the spur of the moment. That's what their policy was. So they had additional voluntary taxes. Countless compulsory and regular donations to the Hitler Fund and the Labor Front. Compulsory subscriptions to Nazi papers, Nazi theaters, etc. Right? Great, Hitler's in power. We're all going to have more money. We're all going to have jobs. No. All of a sudden, $50 a month's coming out of your pocket so that you can go to a Nazi theater anytime, you can go to the Nazi rallies anytime, you can get this Nazi propaganda. You've got Nazi radio on now. That only costs you $25 a month contribution per household or whatever. Whatever the figures were, these are forced on you. That's their economic policy, is the individual has no rights. The small shopkeepers, artisans, and innkeepers receive, instead of a gigantic boom, a sinking turnover, because the monopolies of the new industrial cartels, together with the new tariffs introduced for the sake of the junkers, increase prices of food and other products, and cripple the purchasing power of the working masses. Where before you could get your food and pay your rent, and you've got your electric bill and stuff, now all of a sudden the whole of the money that you had goes to food, just to survive. Why? Who does that benefit? It benefits the people who sell food, right? The junkers, the people who own the massive estates in the east of Germany. But does it benefit them to have the entire economy collapse and for them to be sitting on piles of money they can't spend anywhere because the economy's in such bizarre imbalance? So, the upward leap in the price of butter by 46%. There was an upward leap in different stuff. Butter went up by 46%, margarine by 40%, pork by 36%. And between the spring and winter of 1933. Decline in sugar consumption by 30%, in the sale of margarine by 35% as compared with the year before. Now, the clerks and employees are supposed to receive, according to Nazi economic policy, they get a new luxury salary, right? If you make less than a certain amount, the state will give you this much each month just so you can buy a few extra things. Luxury salary, right? What do they really get? They get a decline in the real wage. Their wage doesn't go anywhere, but prices skyrocket. The small officials are even forbidden to sublet rooms, an important subsidiary source of income. Now why do that? Why say you cannot rent rooms out? You rent a flat with 5 rooms and rent 2 of them out? No, the state forbids it now. Why? Because there are other conglomerates building housing and stuff, and they want you to come rent a room from them, or real estate companies that own housing and stuff, or the state probably that provides housing and wants you to come rent from them instead of subletting and cramming into. The small encumbered business people receive, instead of the smashing of interest slavery, that is annulment of debt and reduction of interest to 2%. There we go. No more debt, that's what the Nazis said. Interest rates down to 2% for everybody. You can borrow money, 2%, that's it. What actually happens? They receive the order from the state. They are ordered by the state not to meddle in the business of the banks. Fresh credits remain closed to them. So far from being given all the credit they want, they're cut off from new credit lines. And they're just told, you shut up. Now the younger sons of the peasantry, the peasants' kids who they're not going to get anything. They're poor. They're not in the position that their older brothers are. They're supposed to get the opening up of more land. The government's supposed to allow purchase and use of more land than before. But what do they get? The Nazis pass, quote, a new law of inheritance, by which a farm can be inherited by the eldest son only. A law throwing fresh tens of thousands of small and intermediate farmers into the towns and dooming them to proletarization and the new tariffs on foreign fodder. Now why would they want to do that? They want to keep farms in the largest possible pieces. And then it's easier to get them together under conglomerations and industrial farming and cartels and corporate farms. Easier to get all that together if you're not splitting every single family farm up into 3 or 4 pieces when the father dies. So just make a law. No, farms have to stay together. Now, maybe you're thinking, well, they want all these tens of thousands of farmers for labor, right? Quote, the New York Times of May 16, 1934 reports a law passed forbidding freedom of movement among the agricultural population, so that industrial areas may be closed against immigrants from the country seeking town employment. So the cities now want to protect themselves from the farmers, and they get a law passed that the farmers can't move to the city. Sure, there are jobs in the cities, and the city wants to keep those jobs for the people in the cities. And what do the people in the farming towns do? See what I'm saying? Economic policy was just a mishmash, a civil war, the state doing whatever any particular interest group was able to convince the state to do at that time for them, and sometimes turning around after they had done this, that, and the other for these people, turn around and consume them and arrest half of them. Why not? Certainly not because there's individual rights. So, there we go. Interesting series on German Nazi economic policy. I had a general idea of what I was going to see when I went into it, but it turned out more fascinating than I thought it was going to be. There we go. Thanks for the donation for that. Sorry that idea got lost and had to wait till now.